I recently got an email from someone considering shifting his career from loss prevention to private investigations. This is not a small thing. And in fact, it's one of the things you have to think about. The earlier you figure out, the better. I mean, your career path. That's what we're talking about here. And what you want to do and the money that you can make doing it. Hi, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. I'm the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, which is premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. Again, this week, that's so important to been there, done that. I did shift from loss prevention into private investigations. There's a couple of things you need to take into consideration and think about before you make this move, and if you want to make this move. One thing is the jobs are very different. And loss prevention is a much faster paced type of thing where you're moving and even running and catching people. Private investigations, there are investigators that almost literally never leave behind their desk. They don't have that surveillance component or are not interested in the surveillance component. They're not interested in witness interviews. They're not interested in going out. And I don't blame them. I get it. And there may be a time in your life where that interests you more. But loss prevention, very interactive with people, hands-on and moving. Private investigations can be very little interaction with other people if you want to set it up that way. I remember when I moved from loss prevention, stopped doing loss prevention and was doing private investigations full time, I started to get back pain. And I actually went to my doctor and she told me the problem was the career change. She said, in loss prevention, you're moving from 0 to 60 3-4 times a week, just going from just all out, running, catching, fighting, catching. What I did when I left loss prevention, when I went to purely private investigations, there was a lot of time sitting in the back of a surveillance van. And she said that you just need to stretch more. You're getting tightened up because of that lack of movement. So there's one consideration. Definitely, if you move to private investigations work, watch your health, stretching, exercise, at least mildly, and think about things like that. I would say also consider loss prevention work was a lot more fun for me. I really enjoyed the watching, finding, following, catching. I enjoy catching bad guys. That's just the way it is. I consider that a much more fun job than private investigations. Private investigations is interesting and there's a lot of enjoyable parts of it. There's a lot more puzzle solving, thinking about where can I get this piece of information? How can I figure out what I need to figure out? What are my different options? It's a problem solving skill, which can be fun, but is definitely a different type of fun than loss prevention. I would also say private investigation work is much, much harder, more difficult than loss prevention work. Loss prevention, for one thing, you show up and you get paid. If you make an apprehension, you get paid exactly the same as if you don't make an apprehension. With private investigation work, there are certain results that are expected. Now, of course, if you're working for a company and they hire you and they say, go out, sit on this guy's house for 4 hours and film him coming out, you have no control over whether he comes out or not. But your employer may push you then to do a pretext or some other move to find out definitively, is he in the house or not? But private investigation work is much more results oriented. Now, especially if you open your own company, then you don't work, you don't eat, and if your work doesn't get good results, then you're done for. So if you're working as a private investigator for a company, if they've hired you to do their surveillance or other work for them, consider the pay is going to be pretty low, maybe on par with loss prevention, right in that zone. If you work for yourself, you can charge a much higher rate. Of course, you have greater overhead. Also with loss prevention, you show up, the store is already there, the cameras are there, the mirrors that you look through are already there, the infrastructure is there, and the customers and shoplifters come in. When you own a detective agency, you have to go out and get every single client. You have to fetch every payday yourself. Much, much more difficult. So loss prevention work, I consider it easier work than private investigation work. Don't mistake that. Loss prevention work can be very dangerous, but it's easier than private investigation work. If you are really attracted to the private investigation side, the investigative side of this industry, then I would consider, if you're looking for real, reliable, decent money, consider working in-house for a company that has investigators. That would be a bank, for example, or God help you, social media companies even have investigators if you want to go work for those guys. All the retailers, they have in-house investigators. Insurance companies have in-house investigators. The government uses a lot of investigators, even if you don't set aside this idea of police detective or federal FBI agent, federal investigator. I mean, I'm sure the Department of Natural Resources has investigators. I know they do. And other agencies of the government that you wouldn't necessarily think of have investigative positions. That might be an appealing thing to you. Again, for a career path, for advancing, for making more money over time, rather than just grinding it out with your own agency. So the way I kind of look at it is, I would suggest consider it the way I did it. I worked loss prevention full time, got my private investigator's license, opened my detective agency, and ran that as sort of a side hustle, I guess you could say. I mean, I gave it all I got. I was not doing things halfway, but it was my side hustle. It was a side business while I went to my day job. I was still an investigator. Don't feel like there's any shame in having a second job when you're a private investigator. There's not. I had my state license. I was doing all the things private investigators do, the surveillance, witness interviews, the whole 9 yards. But I waited until that business was able to bring in enough money and before I left my LP job. So consider doing private investigation work as your side hustle. Do it legally, ethically. If you're required to have a license in your state, get the license. But if you want to work part-time for an investigator, if they want to bring you on board while you maintain your full-time day job doing loss prevention, that's certainly a very viable thing and a good, kind of reasonable, smart way to get into the industry. This is a good time to mention because I forget it so often as I do these videos. I do have a free report over at shadowanyone.com titled, "If You Want to Be a Private Investigator, Give Up Unless You Do These 3 Things." That's free. Just drop in your name and email and you'll get that report and some other interesting things that go along with it. In the meantime, this is Larry Kaye with shadowanyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.